Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The night was heavy with the scent of damp earth as Samantha moved silently through the shadowed halls of the citadel. From a young age, she had been cloistered within these cold stone walls, groomed by the Dark Order to inherit the mantle of High Priestess. The weight of her destiny pressed upon her, but a flicker of defiance burned in her heart. Outside, the moon cast a silvery glow over the landscape. Samantha paused by a towering window, her eyes tracing the outline of distant mountains. She yearned for the freedom that lay beyond, a life unshackled by the chains of prophecy and dark magic. Lost in thought again? A deep voice interrupted. She turned to see Master Theron, her mentor, his piercing eyes studying her intently. Just reflecting on the teachings, Master, she replied cautiously. Good. Reflection leads to understanding, he nodded, though a hint of suspicion lingered in his gaze. Remember, your power is a gift. Do not squander it. Of course, she murmured as he walked away, his robes whispering secrets against the floor. Days later, on a rare excursion beyond the citadel, Samantha found herself wandering through a vibrant village marketplace. The air was alive with laughter and music, a stark contrast to the austere silence of her home. Amidst the crowd, she collided with a young man carrying a lute. "Apologies, miss," he exclaimed, studying her with a gentle hand. "No harm done," she replied, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I'm Caleb," he grinned. "Care to join me for a song?" Against her better judgment, she agreed. For the first time in years, Samantha felt a lightness in her soul as Caleb strummed his lute and sang tales of heroism and adventure. The world seemed broader, full of possibilities she had never dared to consider. But the moment was fleeting. Returning to the citadel, she learned of a new threat emerging in the east. Necromancers, wielders of forbidden magic, were amassing power, resurrecting the long dead and sowing chaos across the lands. "The necromancers seek to disrupt the balance," Master Theron announced to the assembled council. "We must decide our course of action." Whispers filled the chamber. Some saw an alliance as a means to greater power, others feared the repercussions. "Samantha," Theron addressed her, "your abilities surpass all others. You will be our envoy." Gauge their intentions. Her heart clenched. Aligning with necromancers went against everything she believed in, despite her training in dark arts. "As you wish, Master," she replied, masking her reluctance. That night, sleep eluded her. Visions of undead armies and a world consumed by darkness plagued her thoughts. She knew she couldn't be a pawn in this dangerous game. Steeling herself, Samantha made a decision. If the Order sought to ally with such malevolence, she would stand against them. Quietly, she gathered her few belongings and slipped into the night. Her journey led her to the ancient forests where whispers spoke of the light-bearing Ursa mages devoted to preserving balance. Finding them was her only hope. After weeks of travel, she stood before a hidden enclave shimmering with ethereal light. Guards moved to intercept her, but an elder woman raised a hand. "Why does a shadow walker seek the light?" the elder asked, her eyes probing deep into Samantha's soul. "Because darkness threatens to consume us all," Samantha replied. "I wish to stop it." The elder studied her for a moment before nodding. "Then perhaps there is hope." Within the enclave, Samantha began to learn the ways of light magic. The teachings were unlike anything she had known, focused on harmony rather than dominance. Yet, she couldn't fully escape her past. Whispers of mistrust followed her, and she struggled to control the conflicting energies within her. One evening, as she practiced alone, Caleb appeared from the shadows. "I had a feeling we'd meet again," he smiled. "Caleb, what are you doing here?" she gasped. "I'm no mere minstrel," he winked. "I'm a guardian of this enclave. And it seems our fates are intertwined." Relief and joy washed over her. With Caleb's guidance, she began to harmonize the dark and light within her, forging a new kind of magic. But time was running short. Reports came of the necromancers' advance, their forces growing stronger each day. The Order, refusing to see reason, had entered into a pact with them, blinded by the allure of ultimate power. "We must act," the elder declared. "But we cannot do it alone." "I will go," Samantha volunteered. "I can reach them." "It's too dangerous," Caleb protested. "I've walked both paths," she insisted. "Perhaps I can make them see the folly of this alliance." Under cover of night, Samantha approached the citadel she once called home. The familiar shadows now felt oppressive, the air thick with sinister energy. She sought out Master Theron, finding him in the grand hall adorned with ominous symbols. "Why have you returned?" he demanded, eyes narrowing. "To warn you," she said firmly. "The necromancers will betray you. They seek only destruction." "You underestimate us, child," he scoffed. "Together, we will usher in a new era." "At what cost?" she challenged. "Look around you. This path leads only to ruin." For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face, but it was quickly replaced by cold resolve. "If you are not with us, you are against us." Realizing diplomacy had failed, Samantha fled as alarms sounded behind her. She raced back to the enclave, knowing that war was inevitable. As dawn broke, the enclave buzzed with urgent preparations. Warriors and mages alike readied themselves, the weight of impending conflict heavy in the air. Samantha gathered with the elders and Caleb in the central hall, a grand chamber illuminated by floating orbs of light. "They've made their choice," she announced grimly. "The Dark Order and the Necromancers have forged an alliance. Their combined forces will be upon us soon." Elder Miriam nodded solemnly. "Then we must stand united. The balance of the world depends on it." Caleb placed a reassuring hand on Samantha's shoulder. "We'll face them together." She met his gaze, drawing strength from his confidence. "I won't let my past define me." "This is our chance to forge a new path." The enclave's defenders assembled at the forest's edge, a diverse group of lightbringers, elementalists, and even a few renegade dark mages who had seen the folly of their brethren. Samantha stood at the forefront, her cloak billowing in the rising wind. A low rumble resonated through the ground as the enemy approached. From the tree line emerged a horde of undead creatures, twisted abominations animated by necromantic magic. Behind them marched the dark mages of the order, their eyes devoid of mercy. Master Theron stepped forward, his voice amplified by magic. "Stand aside, and we may yet spare you. Resist, and you will be crushed." Elder Miriam replied firmly, "We will not yield to tyranny. The forces you unleash will consume everything, including yourselves." "So be it," Theron sneered, raising his staff. The battle erupted with a cacophony of spells and clashing steel. Samantha unleashed a torrent of dark energy, but instead of the usual destructive force, she infused it with the light magic she had learned. The result was a brilliant cascade of shadows and light that tore through the enemy ranks. Caleb fought by her side, his blade shimmering with enchantments. Together, they moved as one, defending against assaults and retaliating with precision. Despite their efforts, the enemy's numbers seemed endless. The necromancers chanted ominously, summoning more undead to the fray. The defenders were pushed back, their lines faltering. "We can't keep this up," Caleb panted, blocking a strike from a skeletal warrior. Samantha's mind raced. There had to be a way to turn the tide. Then, a daring idea struck her. "If we can disrupt the necromancer's control over the undead, we might stand a chance." "But how?" he asked. "Leave that to me," she said resolutely. "Cover me." She broke away, weaving through the battlefield toward the necromancers clustered behind the front lines. Drawing upon both her dark heritage and newfound light, she crafted a complex spell a counter-frequency to the necromantic energies. As she began the incantation, a vortex of swirling energies formed around her. The strain was immense, her vision blurred, and her limbs felt heavy. But she pressed on, the fate of everyone resting on her shoulders. Noticing her actions, Master Theron shouted, "Stop her!" Several dark mages turned their focus to her, hurling bolts of shadow. Caleb intercepted them, deflecting attacks with shields of light. "Keep going," he urged. With a final surge of willpower, Samantha released the spell. A shock wave rippled outward, severing the bonds between the necromancers and their undead minions. The animated corpses collapsed into lifeless heaps, and a momentary silence fell over the battlefield. Cheers erupted from the defenders, but the victory was short-lived. The necromancers regrouped, anger flashing in their eyes. Master Theron's face contorted with rage. "You meddlesome wretch!" He advanced towards Samantha, dark energies coalescing around him. "You could have ruled by my side. Now, you will be nothing but ash." Samantha stood her ground, her reserves nearly depleted. Caleb moved to her side, but she knew they couldn't withstand Theron's full power. Suddenly, Elder Miriam and the other elders stepped forward, channeling their combined magic. "We stand together," she declared. Theron unleashed a massive blast of darkness. The elders countered with a shield of light, but cracks began to appear under the immense pressure. "We can't hold it much longer," one of them cried out. Samantha realized that only by confronting Theron directly could they end this. Drawing upon the deepest parts of herself, she reached into the wellspring of magic that bridged darkness and light. Her eyes glowed with a radiant darkness as she stepped forward. "Master Theron," she called out. "This ends now." He laughed bitterly. "You think you can defeat me? You're nothing without me." "I am more than what you made me," she retorted. "I am the balance." She raised her hands, and a beam of intertwined light and shadow shot forth, meeting Theron's attack head-on. The clash of energies sent shock waves across the battlefield, uprooting trees and scattering combatants. For a moment, they seemed evenly matched. But Samantha felt herself weakening. Theron's power, fueled by his ambition and hatred, was overwhelming. Caleb's voice rang out. "Channel through me." He grasped her hand, and a surge of energy flowed between them. The combined force strengthened her spell, pushing back against Theron's assault. The elders joined in, lending their power. The beam intensified, and cracks appeared in Theron's dark aura. "No, this cannot be!" he roared as the combined might of Samantha and her allies overwhelmed him. With a final, blinding flash, the dark energy exploded, and Theron was consumed by his own power. As the light faded, silence settled over the battlefield. The remaining enemy forces, leaderless and demoralized, scattered into the shadows. Exhausted, Samantha collapsed to her knees. Caleb knelt beside her, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" She managed a faint smile. "We did it." Elder Miriam approached, offering a hand to help her stand. "Your courage and sacrifice have saved us all." Samantha looked around at the remnants of the battlefield, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over her. "But at what cost?" "The balance has been restored," Miriam assured her. "And you have shown us a new path." In the days that followed, efforts turned to rebuilding and healing. The Enclave opened its doors to those willing to embrace harmony, regardless of their origins. Samantha became a symbol of unity, her journey inspiring others to transcend old divisions. One evening, as the sun cast golden hues across the sky, she and Caleb walked along a tranquil river. "Do you ever wonder what's next?" he asked, skipping a stone across the water. "All the time," she admitted. "But I know I don't have to face it alone." He smiled warmly. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." She gazed into the distance. "There's so much to do. The world is still fragile. But maybe now, there's hope for lasting peace." "Thanks to you," he said softly. She shook her head. "Thanks to USA all of us who chose a different path." As twilight deepened, they returned to the Enclave, where laughter and music filled the air, a stark contrast to the somber silence that once reigned. Months passed, and whispers began to spread of a new council forming, one that embraced all forms of magic in pursuit of harmony. Samantha was invited to lead, but she hesitated. "I never sought power or titles," she confided to Caleb. "Perhaps that's why you're the right person for the role," he encouraged. She pondered the offer, weighing the responsibility against her desire for freedom. In the end, she accepted, not as a ruler, but as a guide to help others find their own balance. Under her guidance, the council worked to mend the fractures between magical factions. Education and understanding replaced fear and prejudice. The necromancers who renounced their dark ways were given a chance at redemption, contributing their knowledge to safeguard against future threats. One day, a messenger arrived bearing news of unrest in distant lands. Old rivalries were resurfacing, and calls for aid echoed across the realms. Samantha convened the council. Our work is far from over. We must extend our efforts beyond our borders. The members agreed, and plans were made to reach out, to share their vision of unity. Before setting out, Samantha visited the citadel ruins where her journey began. Amidst the overgrown stones, she reflected on how much had changed. Caleb found her there. "Thought I'd find you here," he said gently. "Just paying respects," she replied. He nodded. "Ready for the next adventure?" She took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." Together, they led a delegation across the lands, planting seeds of cooperation wherever they went. Challenges remained, but with each step, the world moved closer to the harmony she had long envisioned. Years later, stories were told of the dark priestess who embraced the light, of how she bridged the chasm between opposing forces and ushered in an era of peace. Samantha stood on a hillside overlooking a bustling city, a place where people of all backgrounds mingled freely. Caleb approached, a contented smile on his face. "Look at what we've built," he remarked. She nodded thoughtfully. "It's more than I ever dreamed possible, and it's just the beginning," he added. She turned to him. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." He took her hand. "You've always had the strength within you. I was just lucky enough to be by your side." They watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a tapestry of colors across the sky. In that moment, Samantha felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been arduous, filled with trials and sacrifices, but it had led to a future where balance and understanding prevailed. "Whatever comes next," she said softly, "I know we'll face it together." "Always," Caleb agreed. As stars began to twinkle overhead, they turned back toward the city, a beacon of hope in a world they had helped to heal.